Good morning again, everyone. I've had the good fortune to look at different age groups in Estonia, and I think with our today's topic, the best is that I've had the chance to look at a lot of young people, especially going to the high school, who are about to graduate, what they plan of their lives, what they want to become when they finally are done with their studies, and I've already done it for multiple years. Also some of the youth taking part today, if they've if they had some setbacks in their chosen paths, then I've always had the good fortune to guide them at that moment, at those moments also. And I want to share some of my biggest discoveries from this world with you today. And I'm going to try to invite you into the topic a little bit and try to create a little bit of personal connection to it. In order to achieve that, just reflect upon yourselves. Try to imagine a situation where we have the magic skill of teleporting through time. For example, 2 years into the future. Whew. That was the sound of teleportation happening. Seems as if you can still hear me. So let's imagine that we can teleport 2 years into the future, and the time where we finally land is a place and time where you can use the best parts of yourself, all of your skills, all of your knowledge, all of your ability to learn, life energy, and you can do and focus on what really interests you. There's no borders, no geographical borders, no financial borders or hindrances. There's no. You can just focus on what really makes you happy. And also try to imagine what would this environment be like where you want to do whatever you want to do, down to the smallest details, as if like what the light is like or what the air is like. And also try to imagine who are those people that you would like to do it together with, those that are vitamins for your development, that inspire you. And also try to consider how they acknowledge you, how do they let you know how thankful they are for your cooperation. What is this that really makes you happy if you get some feedback? What makes your soul sing, so to speak? And also try to reflect on what would you actually do in your ideal future? What would be the content of your work in this ideal future that really, really interests you? And in addition, you could also spare a little thought on what would be the pay for it. What would be what's worthwhile for you to get on your bank account, or what makes you smile if you see the sum on your account. And in addition, try to think if you could really apply yourself to anything without any borders, what would the feeling be like that you feel inside? So as much as possible in this big room here with a lot of people here, try to reflect a little bit, try to find this inkling of the feeling that could create this harmony, and also try to think what color this feeling has, at least to you. And if you still have one foot in the dream world and you have the other foot in reality right here, then I would like to invite you back here into reality. Everyone, please show by hands who can confidently say that you already work in such an environment today. It's only a couple of percentages. That's just an example. a really small, quick example of what we consider to be work happiness or what is a happy career. The question already always starts with what do I want? What would make me feel the best? And this is the big shift in the paradigm. And even more, while we were considering it, every single person has the same desire. Doesn't matter when their education ended or when they stopped learning. I think everyone still has the urge of being part of the world, doing what you really, really are interested in. But when we move forward, then a couple of key words. And the key words that maybe best exemplify this change in the world, and also something that the younger generations are really, really looking for. And when we disconnect it from the X's and Y's of the generations, and we just focus on the way of working as it used to be, for those that were born in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and earlier, what do you think what are the key words that kind of spring to your mind when you think of work? Hardworking, loyalty, competency, maybe some conservacy or being conservative. A lot of things in this ilk. And so quite often we hear the question, do you really want to say that the world has changed so much that those things that used to be don't matter at all anymore? No, that's not true. But we're in a situation where you just can't take these old values and you can't continue only by that. You need some new elements. And I think one of the first good key words comes from the Danish language. It's hygge. It's one of those words that you can't really translate because it's something conceptual that makes the Danish into the most happy nation in the world. And I think the word that best describes it is comfort, this Nordic comfort. They say that it's a feeling as if life would hug you. On the one hand, it also has the physical environment that the Danish have an entire environment. It's about pillows and blankets and candles and all that kind of things. But they also say that it's not only physical, it's also this emotional environment. And it's been calculated that the ideal hygge group is 4 to 5 people. It's not too many, where you can still be open with those closest to you. And people actually desire this sort of feeling also when they go to school or when they work. They want the environment not to be too academic or sterile. The environment as such should be this comforting again. And the main key idea here is that we don't want, and it's not only for the younger generation, but for all, we want the life environment or the private life and work environments to be relatively comparable, so that we can be ourselves in every situation. And another important keyword is ikigai. Maybe you've heard it. This comes from Japan, and it's one of their, let's say, discoveries for maintaining a happy life. When they try to look at areas in Japan where people lived very long lives, happy lives, then it was discovered that they actually do something different. One thing is that they mostly focus on things that they actually are good at. You know of yourselves that you're good at plenty of things. But the next question that Japanese asked is, do you actually enjoy it? When we do things that we're good, but we don't enjoy it, we can burn out. And the third question that Japanese asked themselves was, so, okay, if I know it, if I enjoy it, does it make the world better? And this is another element that is extremely important for this principle of ikigai. And the fourth one is, if I make the world better, but do I get paid for it? They're not ashamed of using the word money I'm a little broader in this sense, and I say a sense of accomplishment and recognition, etc. But all of these four parts need to be in balance. And Ikigai is part of the reason why I wake up in the morning. And I'm pretty sure that most of us look for it our entire lives. It's not as easy as just pointing your finger and finding it. Another thing that's valid these days is people want to have this borderless career, which entails flexibility. For example, like we said, that if we stop our education at some point, for example, if we become parents early, do they take this into account? Or do the employers still have the question of, so how do you plan on coping if you have children? So that the world is caring, or if there's a little bit of negativity. Flexibility is the first keyword. People long for a situation where the educational environment as well as working environment would ask us, how can I make you happy? When you look at the first, or if you look at the random work notice, then it states what's required, what's beneficial, and at the end there's a small little print that says that what they offer from their side, and quite often it can say just a lot of interesting work. But with this borderless career, it should be about 50-50, so that the environment around us also asks us, how can we make it interesting and beneficial for you also? We nowadays have so many measures and ways of designing these roles for certain people, and it's quite often to do with a lot of laziness from the companies. They just hand you a manual and say, obey it. So this work design is also a bit of a big portion of this borderless career. And another thing, it needs to be gripping. For a while, it was connected only to the computer game generation. So when they play games already from a very early age, I, for example, I'm an importer of girls. I have 3 daughters at home, and when they play Minecraft, for example, at home, you see them build worlds and having results and getting to the next level. It seems to be ingrained in the DNA of this current generation, and this speed of change is getting faster and faster. There's a constant stimulation that's needed for this generation. I'm not saying that it's something that's good, but it's something we definitely have to face. The head of Circle K, the gas station chain, said that they hire youngsters for the summers, but they've stopped using written manuals. They just use voice commands so that the hot dogs actually get grilled, because one A4 sheet of paper is too much to read for the young generation. And of course we can scoff at this, but it's the world that we live in. And even though I work at a software company, I don't play games myself. So at work I didn't understand what it all has to do with the games, this gamification, etc. And at some point I understood. For example, have you played hide and seek as a child? There's a very immediate feedback with those games also, like hide and go seek. This gamification also entails a lot of focus, a lot of instant feedback, gratification, and people have the same desire to get the same kinds of results as they get from video games, from everything in life, also work, education. When you go to, for example, let's take a situation when you go to work, there's 3 buttons next to the door. How did you sleep? Good? Well, don't remember. Go home, there's another 3 buttons. How did work go? So there's this need of constant assessment on how you're doing and that the companies are also very much interested in it. And we, for example, in our company, we created an app where you have a smiley face or a frowny face, and it's something that's very much natural for youngsters working at our company. They don't even understand how they cope or how we cope before. And in this app, you can see that green is the smiley face, purple is the frowny face, and you can instantly assess your day at work using this app. And a third big change is the vulnerability. And this is a two-edged sword. On the one hand, yes, there's a lot of anxiety issues, there's psychological issues, mood disorders among the younger generation nowadays. So maybe you can say that in the past they couldn't assess it properly, but a lot of psychologists see it that it has to do with the ever-changing, rapidly changing world that we live in nowadays. This information society is very much challenging. There's a lot of changes that need to take place in your brain on a constant basis. But for the employees, it can mean something not very positive, where we can see that a lot of the young people coming to work, or a lot of the young employees send a text message saying that I'm not coming in today, I feel sad. And this feeling sad or not feeling good mentally is a reason enough not to go to work. The Generation Xers will cross their hands and say, what do you mean? I, for example, have gone to work with a fever. And this is something where we see a little bit of a change, where we can't perhaps relate completely before we actually step into their shoes and come to the realization that also for us, not every day is the same, and quite often we do feel as if I'd rather stay home because I don't feel so good, and I'd rather send a text message saying so and just stay in bed the entire day. But this is this societal literacy that we need to acquire. A lot of employees or employers, even nowadays, offer sick days, sick leave that people don't take. Because why don't they do it? Because someone does have to work. And the idea of someone else having to fill in for me doing my work, that's also not okay. But for the youngsters, this means that if the work environment or the work itself isn't in accordance with their requirements, they can't really accept the job. And I just recently spoke with a youngster who now had the dream of becoming a cook. And after 2 months of training, they said, no, I'm quitting. They have to do it every day, and that's unimaginable, and you can't work every day. It may make us laugh a little bit, but we need to take on the role of researcher. Have we asked youngsters on what they actually require? And there's another bit of good news where it's changing. Have you heard of the author Brené Brown? She's one of the top 25 great thinkers in the world. And she has said that, there's no Iron Man in the world. There's no one 100% infallible. Everyone can get depressed. Everyone can feel vulnerable or feel ashamed. And if we build environments that ignore all of these feelings, then we're on the wrong track. Successful management takes these things into account. It gives space for making mistakes. It gives space for talking about making mistakes. So what else? Another very big and important topic that I reflected upon was that this changing world poses new challenges. For example, in adaptability is worth more nowadays than being reliable. Why is it so? Because being reliable is kind of ties your hands. It doesn't include free will anymore. And if you're doing things that you don't want to do, is that you can end up burnt out quite quickly. But adaptability, why is that more important? Is that because the world is currently constantly changing, and this adaptability will help us on a daily basis. And maybe it's not the best example, and I'm not an expert from the agricultural field, but if a milk producer loses a big market, then out of responsibility just to keep producing milk doesn't make sense. You need to change something. You either need to lessen the amounts or start producing cheese or take the next qualitative step to still be competitive. And something else that is very important is when we talk about coping in this new world is being friendly to yourself. And quite often when I meet these youngsters that have these standards that are unfulfilled when it comes to formal education, then quite often they just notice this flaw that they have, not all of the strengths that they have. We quite often just focus on the flaws. For example, when we write a resume, then they write unfinished next to their education level. And I quite often ask them, why not write what you actually got from it? What are those subjects that you actually care for in school? What did you do in those classes? What were the extracurricular things that you did connected with that? So we quite often just focus on the flaws, not the strengths, not the positives. And when looking at this history of education, then it mostly always has focused on the flaws. Even today, I don't know, maybe you've read the book, When Education Becomes Bullying, from mostly because of yourself. It looks at education from the year 1200. And if you notice, children's bed with the little posts, you'd think that it's because children wouldn't get out of bed, but it was, of course, to scare the demons out of children. So the world is a little different nowadays, but the subtext has remained quite the same. It all begins in kindergartens. When everyone is sleeping, why isn't your child sleeping? When everyone is eating, why isn't that child eating? So we always try to, we still focus on all of these negatives. And in school, it's quite drastic. They circle everything that's a mistake in a fat red pen, but they don't underline everything positive or everything correct with green, while they should. And if we only focused on the negatives, then a lot of people would only focus on the quality. They would be very self-critical. But it doesn't work like that. This criticism plays a trick on your brain. It evokes the fight or flight reaction. And those that are the self-critical perfectionists that are constantly surrounded by this self-criticism, then they are in a constant state of alarm, in a way. And what do we lose in that case is this spontaneity. So in order to be able to test new things, try out new things, we need to focus on completely different parts of our brain. In order to be friendly to yourself, there's a simple tip. Next time you mess up something completely, then instead of saying, damn it, I should have done it better, instead of getting mad at yourself, you'd rather say, oh, cutie, it doesn't matter. You wanted the best. But it happens, you know. So we need to find this ability to feel bad for ourselves internally. Very simple on a surface level, but it's very complicated. People go to different, very expensive training courses to find this ability in themselves, this mindfulness. I've done it myself. And quite often, or it's put the new 21st century skills that are necessary in order to cope in this or in this world today have been listed. What's being said about the Z generation is that they're geniuses, and I'd like to say, ha ha ha, are you kidding me? But it's quite often said that they're geniuses, but we don't know in what, because the formal school education doesn't really know how to assess everything that's hidden in them. Let's come back to Minecraft. Scientists don't have exact results for what happens if a small kid starts thinking in 3D from a very early age. They can have completely different superpowers, but the formal education doesn't know how to assess this. So in reality, we're talking about something completely different that might be very much of importance in real life. And this health literacy is another key word that I've brought out. When we're talking about the job market, it's not that we need to have 10 points out of 10 on every single one of these competences. Usually the bigger problem is having very low competences in one or two of these fields. So we shouldn't try to find perfect everything. We need to find, again, the weak spots. But when you're talking about the health literacy, then there's an interesting term called biohacking. And there's a good author, Teemu Arina. He's a Finnish technology educator. And through himself, he discovered something interesting. He had worked too much, he had burnt out, and he had issues with his pancreas. And the Finnish doctor said, this is chronic, you need to take medicine until the end of your life. And he got really upset about it. He said, I'm a smart person, how can it happen that my body is like a black box on an airport and I can't see inside before something bad has already happened? So this information actually about something being wrong was there all along, but he just didn't notice. So he became a cyborg. He started measuring absolutely everything he could, from brain waves to sleep patterns to blood pressure to everything. He had probes all over his body, or then you can Google him and you can see pictures where he looks half man, half machine. And this hacking meant that he tried to see whether he can change his biology. There's no rocket science here. He just approached it. Let's see what happens if I eat an apple. What happens if I go to bed half an hour early? What if I don't watch any TV? What happens if I do a couple of push-ups? And he found a bunch of interesting things. He hacked himself healthy. And the discovery he made and later was verified by Finnish doctors, and it's also been written down as a book. It's been published as Biohacker's Handbook. I have a PDF of it. Email me, I can send it to you. So what did Teemu with his colleagues prove? The biological clock in a person is so smart that despite the fact that we are in this artificial light quite a lot, in the morning we still have enough energy, we've slept enough, and when we drink a cup of coffee in the morning, then we're not awake anymore, but we're close to a brain malfunction, really. We need to drink it only 2 hours after waking up. These are the small little details that we can't figure out without doing this biohacking. You can't figure out that you're stressed at work in the morning because you drank coffee. And also, if you look at the screen 2 hours before going to bed, your brain gets messed up again. So when we're talking about this health literacy, then it's a lot of actions that at the end of the day will influence the young person or every person's life that also has an impact on whether we can actually even give 100%, or we perhaps lose a great deal of our capabilities. There's a lot of work to still be done with this self steering, so to speak. Every person has an internal scale where there's a plus on one side and a minus on the other side. The minus scale are those jobs that you wouldn't do for any money in the world. You probably know a few of those. And when we talk about the plus side, then this is the one that we started our discussion with. There's no borders, nothing that would stop you from doing your ideal job. What would it be for you? And your task for home is to write down 5 to 6 of these ideal jobs. And the world today works in a very simple way. If we put a 0 in the middle, then everyone should start at least at 0 and then keep moving step by step closer to their ideal. And the closer they get, the happier they are. And this is what I'm working for here in Estonia, that everyone would have the option of choosing what they want to do. So, what do we do with those? And how do we talk about dreams with those that have stopped their road to education prematurely? How do we actually get to these levels with them? We need to look at what's missing. Do we even ask them? And I'm pretty sure, and I can say that one of the biggest challenges nowadays is getting people back to school that are actually asking themselves, who am I? What do I want to do in life? And this is the part that's quite often missing. So entering the job market is still a little haphazard quite often. And when we're at 0, when we've veered off into the negative region on the scale, then we're harming our health. We're also harming our peers. After losing ourselves, it's basically like a stone creates a ripple on still water. It just influences everyone a little bit. Finding the ideal job for you is a very holy and a big question. No matter where people are in life, they still want to be treated as equals. The youngsters nowadays, quite often they say that, yeah, it doesn't matter that I didn't finish school, I still want to be asked. I still could be in a conversation with the owners of the company on how to make it better. And something valuable for us is that a career is not something where we play heads or tails for in our youth. It's something that lasts a lifelong, and luckily, we can all live until the age of 120. This means that we can still go crazy at 90, and it also means that 65 is the new 35. And from the standpoint of the youngsters, it means that for those between 16 to 30, you call those the years of the odyssey, you call it the years of finding yourself. There's no wrong choices. If someone would be able to assess the values that the valuable things that they have, the hobbies, their family, the network that they have, and try to put it all in a long-term perspective, then it all isn't as hazy that it will just happen. You need a little bit of thought behind the planning, but the context as such isn't as such as it used to be before, where the beginning already predetermines the end. That at somewhere in the 40s it starts all going downhill and it ends at death. Now the graph looks a little bit different nowadays. And of course we can't foresee everything. The universe has its own plans. But ideally we would find people that believe in us, that want to be the vitamins for our development, inspire us. It can mean that we can go have 4 or 5 different careers in our lives. And in conclusion, in certain respects, this being gripped, this playfulness, this gamification of everything, it can also be combined with our work, that our work also includes more fun and more pleasure in experimenting, trying. There's the Medici effect that's still at play when we try to combine different things. For example, with the youngsters. Okay, we take the academic education on the one side, but we ask them, what are you really interested in? On the picture, for example, you see a bookshop in Venice, and which is also a cat shelter. So when you ask what's the common theme within the cats and bookshops, then you may be a little hesitant at the beginning, but it's a good example of the world today. Have you heard of Alexei Razin? He's a great game architect. No matter what we need to learn nowadays, he can turn it into a game. Not a computer game, but a game. So education has to be playful. It needs to give this immediate feedback. And as a conclusion, an example. I've had the great fortune of working at ProExpert, a software company, and I've tried to I've tested this environment of where everyone is treated as an equal, no matter whether they have experience, no matter what they have whether they have the education. Everyone is equals. Everyone was involved in creating a working environment where they feel good. When we started with the hygge, and then this is on the right track. This feeling of closeness, this feeling of human resources strengths. We talk about resources, and we at our company thought of the R in HR should be respect instead of resources. No matter where the people are in their lives, they need respect, and with them, designing their lives and then this environment together with them, this is something that should and could be one of the key words for this new world. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. It was very interesting. Any questions? Microphone, please, to the speaker. I have a question. Today we are creating these huge high schools. We're pooling schools. And how do you keep youngsters' creativity in those kinds of schools? What do you think about that? Well, researchers nowadays are seeing that young people don't want to work in large corporations because they just feel like a little piece in a big machinery, and they wonder how they can influence things. Spontaneously, I would reply that these mammoth schools, these massive systems, create the same kind of feeling, that they make you feel very small. Of course, when we talk about smart systems and environmental design nowadays, I don't see why these environments can't be redesigned so that they do speak to us. For example, the rooms, the spaces, those are very important in creating that feeling. But I'm not sure. Of course, the system might be big, but within that system, you can have smart, humane environments. You can have comfort and coziness. If that succeeds, then young people can be happy in that environment as well and creative. Any other questions? Looks like not at this point. Thank you very much for your presentation, Tiina Saar-Veelmaa.